Nyasha stands before the mirror, its cold surface staring back at her. She's frozen. The silence stretches out, oppressive and heavy. Her reflection is perfectly still, but it feels wrong, like something is waiting. Her heart pounds louder than her breath, but the mirror doesn't move. It's as if it holds a secret, one that refuses to reveal itself, but she can feel it deep inside, a disturbance beneath the stillness. Something is there, watching her, beyond the glass. The quiet nags at her. Her thoughts race trying to find an explanation, but they falter. Something, no, someone, is present. She feels a coldness creeping up her spine, like an unseen hand resting on her shoulder. A strange unease settles deep in her chest. She steps away, but the feeling follows. Eyes on her back. The reflection is unchanged, still. Yet somehow, the silence now feels like a lie, hiding something far darker, far deeper than she can grasp. Then, it happens. The reflection grins. Not a smile of kindness, but one of knowing. A cold, malicious curve of the lips. Nyasha recoils. The mirror's surface gleams as if mocking her. Her pulse quickens, and the air thickens around her. She tries to turn away, but she's paralyzed, her eyes locked with that sinister smile. The reflection doesn't blink, doesn't look away. It's as though it sees her for who she truly is. And in that gaze, Nyasha feels herself trembling, with fear and recognition. This is no ordinary reflection. This is something else, something ancient and filled with a terrible hunger. Without warning, the reflection shifts. It moves. Nyasha stumbles back in shock, her breath catching in her throat. The figure in the mirror steps out. Not a ripple in the air, no distortion. Just a slow, deliberate movement. It crosses into her space, its feet coming down on the floor, with an eerie softness. The glass is still. The reflection is no longer confined. It is real. The mirror becomes a gateway, pulling the dark figure from the other side into her world. Nyasha steps back, but it follows, eyes never leaving hers. And her sense of reality shatters. The room is silent, save for her racing heartbeat. Nyasha's mind refuses to accept what she's seeing. She reaches for the door, but it's locked. The reflection, no, the thing before her, doesn't speak, but its presence speaks volumes. It moves toward her, the air growing colder with each step. Her legs feel weak. The distance between them closes, and her world narrows. How could this be real? It's impossible. The reflection cannot leave the mirror, but it has. And now it's here with her, waiting for something. Nyasha's mind spins. The truth claws at her, pulling her into a whirlwind of realization. This is no curse of the surface, no simple trick. This is deeper, older. She's staring into something beyond the physical, something of the spiritual realm, tied to old forces she barely understands. The mirror isn't just a portal. It's a conduit, a way for the unseen to leak into the world of the living. She reaches out trembling, almost drawn to it, but she pulls back in fear. There are things in this world that should remain hidden, and she's just uncovered one. The moment of truth. The reflection, no, the creature before her, stops. It raises its hand. The air thickens, charged with an energy she's never felt before. Nyasha's eyes widen. It's as if it's waiting for her to make the first move. But what choice does she have now? There's no turning back. This is the moment. The reality is undeniable. The reflection isn't just a mirror image. It has a will of its own, a life, a purpose. And Nyasha stands at the center of it all. The curse isn't just about the reflection. It's about power, an ancient power now awake. With no answers, only terror. Nyasha stumbles toward the village. The elders know things. They are steeped in the old ways, the forgotten truths that still govern the spirits. She finds the elder she's heard whispers about, the one who once spoke of the Mirror of Mbali. Her voice shakes as she pleads for guidance. The elder's eyes narrow, her hand steady, as she traces a symbol in the air. A sign of protection, of warning. "You've awakened something ancient," she says, her voice low and steady. "Now, you must make the spirits listen, or the reflection will take you." The elder's words echo in Nyasha's mind as she returns to the mirror. The reflection watches her from the surface, its eyes now glowing with an unnatural light. She realizes then that the mirror is not just a thing of glass, it is a vessel, a trap for ancient forces that cannot be contained by the human realm. The reflection no longer merely mirrors her. It's a part of the dark forces, a spirit caught between worlds, trying to break free. The physical and spiritual have blurred, and Nyasha now stands between them, a vessel for the battle ahead. Nyasha knows what she must do, but the task is overwhelming. The rituals, the prayers, the offerings. She races against time to gather the ancient rites, her mind scattered with fear, but determined. The curse won't wait. She feels the reflections, power growing stronger, its presence becoming a weight on her chest. Every moment spent searching feels like a countdown. The mirror pulses with energy, as if the reflection is feeding on her fear, growing stronger with every breath she takes. There's no time to waste. She has to act, or everything she knows will be consumed. Nyasha stood alone in the quiet of her home, her thoughts heavy with the wisdom her grandmother had passed down. Her grandmother, a revered healer in the village, had always spoken of spirits, the unseen world, and the delicate balance between the two. Nyasha had grown up listening to those stories, feeling the weight of her ancestry in every word. As a child, she had absorbed them eagerly, dreaming of one day walking the path her grandmother had paved. Now, as an adult, those lessons echoed in her mind with a new intensity. Her ambition was strong. She wanted to be a healer, just as her grandmother had been. But the world she had once viewed with awe now felt different. The teachings of the past felt both a blessing and a warning. The spirits that guided her ancestors were powerful, but they were not always kind. She had learned to respect them, but today she feared them. Her grandmother's voice came to her in the silence. "There is a mirror, child," she had once whispered. "A cursed thing. The Mirror of Mbali. It reflects not just what is, but what could be, what should not be. It holds power, but at a cost. Never gaze too long into it for the spirits. Inside may see you as a doorway." Nyasha had dismissed the story as nothing more than a tale, a warning against vanity perhaps, or a clever way to keep her from wasting time staring into her reflection. But now, standing in front of the very mirror her grandmother had warned about, Nyasha could feel the weight of those words. The air felt thick, as if the mirror had a life of its own, watching her, waiting. Her fingers hovered just above the surface, but she did not touch it. The mirror was cold, as if it had not felt the warmth of a hand in centuries. Nyasha's breath caught as the surface rippled ever so slightly, though she could see no reason for it. It was as if the mirror were breathing with her. Her heart raced as she stared into it. The reflection was not her own. It was distorted, fleeting, as though something unseen shifted behind her, mocking her every move. The unease in her chest grew, her pulse quickening. She had heard the stories, but the truth was more terrifying than any tale her grandmother had told. The mirror was not just a reflection. It was a gateway, and the forces on the other side were stirring. Tawanda noticed the change in his wife immediately. She was quieter than usual, her brow furrowed in a way that he had never seen before. He approached her carefully, knowing the weight of her thoughts often burdened her in silence. "Nyasha," he began, his voice gentle but laced with concern. "What is it? You've been distant all day." She flinched, her hand still resting on the mirror, but her eyes never left the glass. "It's nothing," she replied softly, though her words rang hollow in the stillness of the room. Tawanda was not fooled. "Tell me," he pressed, stepping closer. "Whatever it is, you can share it with me." But Nyasha hesitated, unsure of how to explain the unexplainable terror creeping through her. How could she tell him that the mirror was no longer just a mirror? That it was a thing of ancient power watching her, waiting for something? She couldn't. So instead she said nothing. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Tawanda reached out to hold her. She stiffened, her body tense with the weight of her thoughts. After a long silence, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I saw something in the mirror, Tawanda. It smiled at me." His hand tightened around hers, but his words were calm. "A smile. Nyasha, you're stressed. That's all. It's been a hard week." She shook her head, the memory of the reflections, cold grin too vivid to ignore. "It wasn't just a smile, Tawanda. It was different. It felt like it knew something about me. Something that I didn't even know myself. And it wasn't just a reflection. It was something else. Something that shouldn't be." Tawanda's eyes softened with concern, but doubt flickered in his gaze. "You're tired. You need rest. Whatever you saw, it's just your mind playing tricks." But Nyasha wasn't convinced. Her mind knew what it had seen. The mirror was more than just a piece of glass. The days passed, and Tawanda's words echoed in her ears. It was easy to believe that her fear was simply the result of stress. Everyone had moments of doubt, of exhaustion. But the terror that gripped her heart wouldn't fade. The reflection had stirred something inside her, something ancient, and she could feel it watching. Tawanda continued to reassure her, dismissing her fears as the result of too many sleepless nights. But Nyasha's isolation deepened. The more he dismissed her, the stronger her belief grew that something far darker was at play. The spirits were not to be ignored. She had been warned, and now she had to face the consequences. Nyasha spent long hours in the quiet of the night, watching the mirror, waiting for something, anything. She could feel the presence growing stronger with each passing day, the reflection growing more distorted, more alive. It was as though the spirits were trying to reach through the glass, tugging at her soul, calling her. Tawanda's comforting words faded into the background. Nyasha knew, deep down, that this was no mere trick of the mind. The spirits had awakened, and they would not rest until they had what they wanted. The time to confront them was nearing, and Nyasha was the one who had been chosen. Her grandmother's teachings rushed back to her, the ancient rituals, the offerings to the spirits, the careful balance between the physical world and the unseen. Nyasha had always known she would one day face this. Whatever this was. She had felt it in her bones. But now, as the spirits clawed at her reality, she realized that she wasn't just caught in the middle of a supernatural battle. This was a test of her bloodline, of the legacy passed down from her grandmother, the healer, the seer. Nyasha was not just an observer. In this struggle, she was a participant, and the spirits would only release her if she proved worthy of their power. Torn between fear and the need for answers, Nyasha decided to seek out Nia, the village elder. Nia had lived through countless storms of the spirit world and was said to hold the wisdom of the ages. Nyasha needed guidance, but she was not sure if Nia's wisdom would come with a price. The elder's knowledge was deep, but the cost of knowing could be steep. But Nyasha had no choice. The mirror's curse was too strong. She needed to understand it before it swallowed her whole. The boundary between the world Nyasha knew and the spiritual world began to blur. As the days wore on, the mirror's grip tightened, its reflection no longer her own, but a twisted mockery of her image. She could feel the pull of her ancestors' power, but also the weight of the ancient forces that had once ruled over them. The spirits of the past and the present were now in conflict, and Nyasha found herself in the middle. The truth was no longer a distant memory. It was a living, breathing force, one that she had to confront. The journey her grandmother had prepared, her for had begun, but the path ahead was darker than she had ever imagined. Each time Nyasha looked into the mirror, the reflection became harder to ignore. At first it was subtle, a flicker in her eyes, a brief shift in her posture. But now, the change was undeniable. Her reflection did not move when she did. It moved when it pleased. It twisted its mouth into a smile that Nyasha never intended, mimicked her actions with deliberate slowness, and even made gestures that she had not yet thought of. The chill that crept over her each time she gazed at the mirror grew colder, more oppressive. Her reflection was no longer a passive image. It was becoming a living thing, its own entity, with its own will. It felt like it was watching her, calculating her next move before she made it. She stepped back, her heart pounding. This was no ordinary mirror. It was not a reflection. It was a trap. Desperation led Nyasha to seek out Nia, the village elder. Nia had seen many things in her long life: spirits, curses, and ancient forces. Nyasha knew the elder would understand. When Nyasha arrived, Nia's eyes softened, as if she already knew the reason for the visit. "It calls to you, doesn't it?" Nia asked without waiting for an answer. Nyasha nodded, unable to speak for the weight in her chest. "It's the Mirror of Mbali," Nia said, her voice low and serious. "A powerful and cursed thing. It was made to trap souls, to reflect not what is, but what could have been. It shows you not just your face, but your deepest fears, your darkest desires, and it will take you, if you let it." The weight of the words hit Nyasha like a hammer. She had heard the stories, but she had never believed them. Now it was clear. She was caught in a battle for her soul. Nia's face darkened, and she leaned closer. "There are many who have tried to escape the curse of the Mirror of Mbali," she said. "But none have succeeded. The curse traps your spirit in a constant struggle with your own reflection. You become its prisoner. It controls you, takes over your thoughts, your actions. Eventually, it consumes you." Nyasha's heart skipped a beat. The fear that had been gnawing at her for days swelled into something far deeper. "How do I stop it?" she asked, her voice trembling. Nia sighed. "The mirror must be destroyed, but not in the way you think. It is not just an object. It is a link, a doorway. If you are to break its hold, you must face the reflection and defeat it." Nyasha swallowed hard. To defeat the reflection meant facing not just the curse, but everything it was feeding on. Her own fears, her own darkness. The battle would be more than physical. It would be spiritual, and she was not sure she had the strength to win. Nia's eyes grew heavy with concern as she spoke of the ritual. "There is a way," she said softly, "but it requires a great sacrifice. To undo the curse, you must offer up something of great value, something you cannot live without." Nyasha's pulse quickened. What do I have to give up? Nia paused, her gaze piercing. It is not a question of what you have, but what you are willing to lose. The sacrifice could be your life, or the life of someone you love. The ritual is dangerous, and the cost is always heavy. Nyasha's thoughts raced. She had always wanted to be a healer, to walk the path her grandmother had walked. But what if the cost of healing was too high? What if, in breaking the curse, she destroyed everything she held dear? Yet the thought of being trapped in the mirror's grip, losing herself to it. She knew she had no choice. As the days passed, the reflection grew bolder. Nyasha would turn to leave, and it would be there, smiling with the same twisted grin. She would blink, and it would be closer, almost reaching out as if trying to touch her. It knew her every movement, her every thought. One evening, Nyasha stepped away from the mirror, only to hear the reflection laugh, a sound that was not hers. The laugh echoed in her ears, haunting her, reminding her that it was no longer just a reflection. It was her enemy. It moved when she moved, but now it anticipated her every move. Nyasha was being hunted by a version of herself she did not recognize. And with every encounter, the battle between her and the mirror grew more intense. Nyasha stood before the mirror once again, her heart racing. This time, the reflection did not merely mirror her movements. It smiled, its eyes gleaming with malice. "You think you can escape me?" The reflection whispered, its voice like a snake's. Hiss. Nyasha recoiled, her hand reaching for the door, but the reflection's eyes held her in place. "You can run, but you cannot hide," it mocked. It was as though the mirror had become a living thing, taunting her, mocking her helplessness. Nyasha's breath caught in her throat. This was no longer just a battle of physical space. The mirror had become a battlefield of the mind, where her very thoughts were twisted against her. Her reflection was alive, and it was winning. That night, Nyasha stood before the mirror, unable to look away. She could feel the presence of the reflection even before she saw it. This time, when the reflection grinned, it spoke. "You can't hide from me forever," it said, its voice echoing in Nyasha's ears. The words were chilling, familiar, as if it was a part of her. "What are you?" Nyasha whispered, the question trembling on her lips. The reflection smiled wider. "I am you," it said, its voice dripping with malice. Nyasha's heart raced. The reflection, her reflection, was speaking to her. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. The reflection was not just an image, it was a part of her, a dark, twisted part that had been waiting for its chance to take over. As the days stretched on, the reflection grew stronger. No longer content to mimic Nyasha's every move, it began to challenge her. It no longer merely reflected her actions. It actively sought to overpower her. It was no longer a passive observer. It was a force, a presence that sought to control her. Each time she confronted it, it was different. It mocked her, taunted her, and pushed her to the edge. Nyasha could feel her strength fading, her willpower eroding. She was losing herself, and the reflection was gaining ground. The more she tried to break free, the more the mirror seemed to pull her in. It was no longer just about the curse. It was about her soul. And with every passing day, the boundary between herself and the reflection thinned. Nyasha could no longer deny it. The mirror, the reflection, the curse. It was all real. She had been wrestling with her own fears, her own darkness. The reflection was not just a curse. It was a manifestation of everything she had tried to hide. Now, as she stared into the mirror, she understood the truth. She had to confront her deepest fears, her most painful memories. The reflection was a part of her, and until she faced it, there would be no escape. It was not just about the mirror. It was about her past, her choices, her legacy. If she could not defeat it, she would be consumed by it. The time had come. Nyasha stood before the mirror, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. The ritual was the only way to break the curse, but it required a sacrifice, something precious. Could she give up what was most dear to her, her life, or the life of someone she loved? Nyasha felt her strength waver. The reflection grinned, sensing her hesitation. "You have no choice," it whispered. "You will surrender to me, or you will sacrifice all that you hold dear." The battle was not just for her life. It was for her soul, and Nyasha had only one decision left to make. Would she sacrifice? Nyasha stood before the mirror, her hands trembling as though the glass itself was alive. The reflection, twisted and dark, stared back at her. It was no longer an innocent image of herself. It was a malevolent force, grinning, daring her to look deeper. The reflection was not her. It was something darker, something that wanted to consume her. Her heart pounded in her chest, the weight of the curse bearing down on her like a mountain. It whispered, mocking her fears. "You can't escape me," it hissed. Nyasha's breath caught in her throat. She had fought for so long, but tonight it felt like the end. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. It was now or never. She had to face what was in the mirror, and she had to face herself. The reflection's eyes glinted with cruel amusement as Nyasha's gaze locked with it. "You think you are the real one?" It sneered. "Look at you. You are nothing but a poor imitation. You hide behind your good deeds, your dreams of healing, but deep inside, you know the truth. You are as flawed as I am." Each word hit Nyasha like a blow. The reflection twisted its mouth into a mocking smile, forcing Nyasha to confront the shame she had buried deep within. She had always believed she could heal others, but had she healed herself? Could she truly stand up to the darkness in the mirror? Or was she destined to be just like the thing staring back at her, broken and lost? "I am the true version of you," the reflection whispered, sending a chill down her spine. "You are nothing without me." The air grew thick, as if the room itself were alive. Nyasha could feel the presence of the ancestors closing in around her. She had heard of such things, the power of the spirits when they came to guide or to judge, but never had she felt it so intensely. Their energy surrounded her, pushing at her, testing her resolve. Her skin prickled as if the spirits themselves were watching, weighing her every thought. She tried to stand tall, but every fiber of her being trembled. The spirits were here, but their presence was not comforting. It was a reminder of the ancestors' judgment, of the trials that each soul must face. This was not just a fight for survival. This was a fight for her soul. Nyasha clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. "You are not me," she spat at the reflection. "You are a lie, a twisted shadow of who I am. I refuse to let you define me. I will not bow to you." The words felt strange coming from her mouth, but she spoke them with power, knowing that her voice was the first weapon in this war. She was not just fighting the reflection, she was fighting herself, the fears and doubts that had always held her back. "You don't know me," she added, her voice steady. "I may be flawed, but I am not broken." The reflection sneered, but Nyasha stood firm. This was not the moment to fall. This was the moment to rise. The reflection's laughter echoed in the room, sharp and cruel. "You think you can defeat me with words?" It mocked. "This is not a battle of speech, child. This is a war of wills. You must accept who you truly are, your flaws, your darkness. You can never outrun me. I am as much a part of you as the blood in your veins." Nyasha's stomach twisted. It was right. She had spent so long running from the parts of herself she hated, the parts of her that made her feel weak and unworthy. But it was clear now. She could not defeat the reflection by pretending those parts didn't exist. She had to accept them. "You can mock me," Nyasha said, her voice steady. "But I am not afraid of you." The reflection's laughter faltered, its smug grin slowly fading as Nyasha stood taller. She was no longer afraid. Nyasha stood facing the mirror, her heart racing but her mind clear. She understood now. The only way to defeat the reflection was not through strength or violence, but through acceptance. She had to stop running from her own fears, her own flaws. She was human, and that was enough. She had always been trying to be perfect, to outrun the darkness in her heart. But that was the very thing that gave the reflection its power. "I accept you," she whispered, not to the reflection but to herself. "I accept everything that I am. The good, the bad, the broken." The reflection's expression faltered for a moment. "You cannot accept me," it snarled, "for you are weak." Nyasha shook her head. "I am not weak. I am whole." Desperation filled Nyasha's chest. She knew there was no time left, no more strength to fight this battle alone. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer that had been passed down through her, family for generations. It was an ancient prayer, one that called on the spirits for help when all hope seemed lost. "Great ancestors, hear me," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady. "Guide me through this trial. Grant me the strength to overcome this curse. I call upon your wisdom, your power, to protect me." As the words left her lips, she felt a surge of energy, a warmth that spread through her body. The ancestors were with her, their presence strong and protective. The reflection wavered, its confident smirk faltering. Nyasha could feel the spirit's power shifting the balance of the battle. As Nyasha's prayer filled the air, the room seemed to change. The spirits were no longer a distant force. They were present, surrounding her, filling the space with their energy. The reflection, once so confident, began to falter. Its form wavered, its edges blurring like smoke. Nyasha's heart raced as the power of the ancestors grew stronger. She could feel their presence, their strength, washing over her like a wave. "You are not alone," a voice whispered through her mind. It was the voice of her grandmother, the one who had taught her the ways of healing and prayer. The reflection screeched in protest, but Nyasha stood firm, her heart filled with the strength of her ancestors. The battle was no longer hers alone. It was a battle of generations, of the spirits and forces that had shaped her. With one final surge of energy, Nyasha's voice rang out, strong and unwavering. "I am not your prisoner. I am free." The reflection shrieked, its form twisting and distorting as if trying to escape the grip of the spirits. In one last burst of light, the reflection shattered, its image vanishing from the glass. Nyasha stood, breathing heavily, her body filled with a fierce triumph. The mirror was silent, now, no longer a threat. She had won. She had faced herself, accepted her flaws, and overcome the curse. The spirits were still with her, their presence surrounding her in a comforting embrace. She had broken the mirror's grip, and in doing so, had reclaimed her own power. The room was quiet. The oppressive weight of the curse was gone, and with it, the dark presence of the reflection. Nyasha stood alone, her heart still racing but at peace. The spirits, her ancestors, were gone, but their energy lingered, a protective shield around her. She could feel them watching over her, guiding her as she moved forward. The mirror, once a source of terror, was now just a mirror, an ordinary piece of glass. Nyasha smiled softly, knowing that she had faced the darkest part of herself and had emerged stronger. The journey was not over, but she was no longer afraid. The storm had passed, and in its wake, she had found peace. Nyasha stood motionless, gazing at the empty mirror. The reflection was gone, shattered by her victory, but its weight lingered in her chest. The battle had ended, but the air still felt thick, as though the curse had left its mark on more than just the glass. She could still hear the echo of the reflection's mocking laughter, still feel the rush of panic that had consumed her moments before. Her hands clenched into fists, and she drew in a breath, trying to steady her heart. What had she just gone through? She didn't have the answers, but the silence in the room felt like a new kind of storm. Quiet, heavy, and full of unknowns. She had won, but the cost was still unfolding inside her. Tawanda stepped into the room, his steps careful, as though he could feel the fragile air. His eyes were soft with concern, but his presence grounded Nyasha like the steady flow of a river, reassuring and constant. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. His gaze held all the understanding she needed, as though he had felt every moment of her struggle, standing silently beside her in the shadows. The tension in the room seemed to ease with his presence. She didn't have to say a word to him. His mere being brought a calmness she hadn't known she needed. He stood next to her, their shoulders almost touching, offering her strength without uttering a single word. Tawanda's eyes scanned Nyasha carefully, taking in her stillness the way her shoulders seemed to bear an invisible weight. He knew the battle was over, but Nyasha's fight wasn't something anyone could truly understand. Not yet. "You've done it," he finally said, his voice low and filled with awe. Nyasha turned to him, her expression unreadable. She didn't have the words to explain what she had just gone through. How could she? But Tawanda didn't need an explanation. He knew she had conquered something unimaginable. The reflection had been a monster, a dark mirror of everything Nyasha feared. But she had stood firm, and now, as the silence stretched between them, he knew this moment had changed her. She had won, and in doing so, she had become something greater, even though the reflection was gone. Nyasha could feel its presence, lingering like a shadow. It was as if it had left a part of itself behind, clinging to her thoughts, haunting her in the quiet spaces between breaths. She rubbed her temples, trying to shake off the weight, but the echo was stubborn. The battle might be over, but the journey was far from complete. What if the reflection was right? What if the darkness within her could never be fully erased? She could still hear its voice, sharp and taunting. It wasn't just the curse she had defeated. It was herself. And even now, the struggle wasn't fully won. As the days passed, Nyasha began to realize that the battle she had fought wasn't with some external force. It was within herself. The reflection hadn't just been a dark version of her. It was the fears, the doubts, the parts of herself she had always tried to ignore. She had faced those parts head on, and in doing so, she had found a strength she didn't know she had. She had never considered herself powerful. Too often she had felt weak, unworthy, caught in the currents of doubt. But she had fought, and she had won. She had not only defeated the curse, she had defeated the darkness inside herself. The reflection had been right about one thing. It was not the external battle that mattered. It was the inner war. And Nyasha had emerged victorious. Tawanda's presence had become a steadying force in Nyasha's life since the battle. They didn't need to speak to understand each other anymore. There was an unspoken bond between them now, forged in the fires of her trial. He had watched her fight, watched her struggle, and now they shared something deeper. It wasn't a bond of words or grand declarations. It was something silent but powerful, something only survivors understood. Nyasha could feel it when he looked at her, when his hand brushed against hers. He knew. He knew what it had taken for her to stand strong. And in that silence, there was a comfort. They had both faced something extraordinary, and that shared understanding was enough. The mirror was gone, but Nyasha's journey had only just begun. She could no longer look at herself as she had before. The battle had triggered something in her, something that needed to be rebuilt. She couldn't just patch herself up and go on as she was. No, she had to rebuild from the inside out. It wasn't just the curse that needed undoing. She had to undo the scars that had been left, the fears and doubts that had clung to her for so long. She began to heal, but this time she approached it differently. It wasn't about fixing herself to be perfect. It was about accepting that she was whole, even with her flaws. That was the strength she had found. In quiet moments, Nyasha could still feel the presence of the ancestors surrounding her. They had been with her during the darkest moments, guiding her with their wisdom, their strength. She hadn't seen them, but she could feel them, like a distant hum in her veins, a soft voice in her heart. They had helped her face the darkest part of herself, and now they helped her move forward. Nyasha's spirit had been strengthened by their protection. The curse may have been broken, but the wisdom of the ancestors would guide her through the rest of her life. She felt their resilience in her own bones, and it filled her with a quiet power. She wasn't alone, and she never would be again. The battle with the mirror was over, but Nyasha's journey was just beginning. She no longer feared the darkness she had once tried to escape. It was no longer a threat. It was a part of her, a part she had accepted and learned from. She stood, taller now, walking with a newfound confidence. She had defeated the curse, and in doing so, she had found the strength to embrace her true self. The future was unknown, but Nyasha was no longer afraid. She had learned the power of inner peace, the power of self-acceptance, and as she stepped forward into the unknown, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Nyasha stepped away from the mirror, no longer trapped by the reflection of her fears. The curse that had once defined her was gone, and in its place a new woman stood. She was not perfect, but she was real, strong, and free. The journey had shaped her into someone unrecognizable, not because she was a different person, but because she had finally embraced the fullness of who she was. As she looked ahead, her heart felt light, open to the possibilities that lay before her. She was no longer the woman she had been. She was something stronger, someone who had learned that true freedom comes not from running away from fear, but from facing it and choosing to rise above it. And with that strength, she walked into her new life. The battle with the mirror was not over. Not in the way Nyasha had expected. She had fought it, struggled against its dark magic. But now she understood something deeper. The Mirror of Mbali was never just an external force. It was a manifestation of the turmoil inside her. All her unresolved fears, the doubts she'd never voiced, the insecurities she had buried deep within herself. These were the true curse. The reflection had been a reminder of all the parts of her she hated, all the things she had tried to hide. It wasn't the mirror that held the power. It was her own mind that had given it life. This realization crushed her, yet it also set her free. To defeat the curse, she had to confront her own darkness. The reflection had always known her better than she knew herself. It mocked her, twisted her emotions, and fed on the shadows she kept hidden. But now, Nyasha stood before it, with open eyes, no longer afraid to face what it showed her. The reflection became a mirror to her soul, revealing the fears she had long denied. The self-doubt that whispered in her ear, the guilt for mistakes she had never forgiven herself for, the shame she carried without ever acknowledging it, all of it stood before her, alive and breathing. But she didn't shrink away. She stepped forward, facing the dark parts of herself with the strength she hadn't known she had. The reflection snarled, but this time, Nyasha wasn't backing down. She realized the battle had never been with it. It had always been with the parts of herself she had been too afraid to confront. The reflection cracked, but Nyasha didn't feel triumph. No, the victory was deeper, quieter. She understood now that defeating the mirror was never the point. The true victory lay in accepting herself, in accepting the darkness as much as the light, the flaws as much as the strengths. She had spent so long trying to be someone else, someone perfect, someone who was never afraid, never vulnerable. But that wasn't real. The real victory wasn't in perfection. It was in embracing her humanity. The battle with the reflection had been the final test, and in the quiet aftermath, Nyasha found peace, not in conquering an external force, but in finally making peace with herself. Nyasha stood before the mirror one last time, but this time she wasn't searching for answers in the reflection. She wasn't expecting to see a perfect version of herself or a flawless image. What she saw was real. It was her, a woman who had fought her fears and won, not by running from them, but by walking through them. Her eyes held a new light now, one that was calm, steady, and full of understanding. She had accepted herself, imperfections and all. The mirror no longer held power over her, no longer had the ability to distort her image. It was just glass, a reflection of who she had become. And she smiled. With that smile, Nyasha felt a weight lift from her heart. It wasn't a smile of triumph or victory, but a smile of peace, a smile of reclamation. She had reclaimed herself from the shadows, from the lies she had told herself, from the fear that had defined her for so long. There was no shame in the smile, no fear of judgment. It was simply her, whole and unbroken, standing in the truth of who she was. For the first time in a long while, Nyasha felt free. Free to be herself, with all her flaws, all her scars, and all her strengths. The smile was the moment she stepped into the woman she was always meant to be. The world around her seemed to shift. Nyasha's victory wasn't a grand moment of applause or a declaration of strength to the world. It was quiet, internal, and deeply personal. The true power she had found wasn't in fighting the reflection or breaking the curse. It was in accepting herself. Unfiltered and unapologetic, she no longer had to be anything other than who she was. The fear of judgment, of not being enough, of hiding parts of herself to fit an image. Those things had no power over her anymore. She was free from the chains she had wrapped around herself. It wasn't just freedom from the curse. It was freedom from the very insecurities that had held her captive for so long. As Nyasha looked into the mirror one last time, she saw something different. The reflection was still there, but it no longer had any power over her. It no longer defined who she was. The dark, twisted image that had once mocked her, that had made her feel small, no longer held sway. It was just a reflection, a mere image of what she had once feared. She had broken its hold, no matter how distorted or dark the reflection appeared. Nyasha knew now that it did not define her. She was not her fears. She was not the woman who had once been trapped in the mirror. She was the woman who had emerged stronger, more confident, and more whole than she had ever believed possible. The reflection was just a shadow. She was the light. With the curse broken, Nyasha felt a profound peace settle within her heart. The fight wasn't over in the way she had once thought. It wasn't about breaking external chains or defeating an enemy. The true battle had always been within her, and now that she had found peace with herself, the world outside seemed different, too. The curse was gone, but Nyasha knew that her journey had been about mastering the eternal battles, the battles that shaped who she was. The peace she now felt was not just a momentary calm. It was the kind of peace that came from accepting oneself fully, from embracing every part of her soul, both light and dark. And as she walked forward, she carried that peace with her, unshaken and unbroken.